let me just introduce you. From the APOSL side, this Navin and Natalie, they're both students. Navin is doing IT and Natalie is actually doing her A-levels. From the Young Apologist side, there's Sam Nesson. This is the awesome guy I was telling you about that I met last year. And then there's Professor Living, who's from retired from UM as well. Retired from UM.
Yeah,
okay.
still teaching part.
But still teaching. This is going to be interesting. He's actually a professor of geology, so good luck to you guys. Off you go. Yeah, let's give her a hand, huh?
Hey, hello everyone, I'm Navin. Can you hear me?
Hello, David.
Okay, today I'm here to talk to you about evolution, how it's both a fact and a theory. Okay, evolution is, some people always say there's a common misconception that evolution is just a theory. Theory in a scientific sense is very different from what you would consider a theory in a common language term. Now, in science, evolution is considered to be a fact, and theory is an explanation of facts, just as how everyone considers gravity to be fact, and the theory of gravity explains how gravity works and all that. Now, for evolution to work, evolution basically means change in the gene pool over time, and science has discovered that all organisms are descended through modification from pre-existing organisms over time. Now, this is what always confuses people, abiogenesis. Evolution does not explain the origin of life. The origin of life is a subject called abiogenesis, which is not something to do with evolution. However, there is mounting evidence to suggest that that the abiogenesis did happen, and it is a process by which life came from inorganic matter. And there have been many experiments, but people are still not sure. Scientists are not sure what is the correct mechanism which formed life. And there are several models being investigated. Evolution is the explanation of the diversity of life, not how it began. Now we come to natural selection, which is one of the mechanisms of evolution. Now, natural selection is basically very simple. It's how it creates adaptations in creatures. What it does is environmental pressures like survival, basically. Survival helps, it defines what natural selection is. It's a non-random process by which biological traits become more or less common in a population. Now this is defined by whether the organism survives or not to propagate its genes to the next generation. Now, like for example, in this picture, you can see the pressure that selects whether a species survives or not is the predator. Now, if the predator sees the green beetle as more eye-catching and not able to blend in with the environment, the bird goes for that beetle. And this causes the brown beetle to become more common and propagate more often, which gives them an evolutionary advantage and causes the beetle to adapt, and more brown beetles exist. Now, the second mechanism of evolution is mutations. Now, mutations are random. Mutations most mutations have no effect and are considered neutral. And most mutations that are not neutral, that do cause an effect that is expressed in the phenotype. Phenotype and genotype explanations are somewhat technical terms. Basically, phenotypes are traits that are expressed by a creature, like physical things, like say the color of your hair, the color of your eyes, or perhaps whether or not you have arms or not. Those are phenotypes. Those are expressed by the genes. Those are traits which are expressed by the genes. Now, most mutations that happen in your genes do not cause any effect whatsoever to you. But the some that do cause effect, most of them are harmful, or they cause negative side effects to you. But a very few small cases of mutations are beneficial. Now, some examples of mutations that are beneficial are sickle cell anemia. Now, this happens mostly in some places in Africa where malaria is very common. Now, what happens is, this is a mutation where the hemoglobin becomes clumped, and this is why it calls sickle cell. But so it helps fight against malaria better. However, there is a downside to it, that their life expectancy is shorter They don't live as long, but then again, they do live longer than they would if they were exposed to malaria anyway. So, in a sense, it's considered a beneficial mutation. There are several other things like lactose tolerance. We used to be lactose intolerant, but now we are lactose tolerant. There are several other mutations, and we'll go through probably later. Already 4 minutes, I should quicken up. Okay, genetic drift is just. But,
Okay.
in each generation, some individuals may just by chance leave behind more descendants. This could be natural disasters or any other random event, like someone accidentally stepping on a bunch of green beetles. Poor green beetles, always dying. Yeah, gene flow, also called migration, is when another population moves to another area, or when they integrate with that population, and the genes from a different population then move there, and you have more diversity in the gene pool. And those were the mechanisms of evolution. Now we come to some evidence for evolution. Now this one here is phylogenetics. Phylogenetics is basically, if you've seen it, it's the tree of life. Basically, it shows how interrelated these organisms are and who they are descended from and all that. Now this is the more accurate version, which is rooted. This is an unrooted tree. It's actually more of a circle than a tree once they found it, but yeah. And you can see that there's so many creatures here that we are so many related. You can see the long lines are the ones with the common ancestors, and the ones at the end are all the species that currently exist. And now speciation. This is what happens when evolution goes on for a long time. Now, I don't have time to go into details about the very different types of speciation, but the most important thing about speciation is that there is isolation. Basically, certain populations separate from another population and they don't interbreed with one another. This causes two different genetic drifts to happen between both populations, and also there's no gene flow between the populations, and so they live separately, they evolve separately, and they become, and over time they have different traits and they become different species. This is how speciation happens. Now, an example of speciation is ring species. In biology, ring species is connected series of neighborhood populations, each of which can interbreed with closely related populations, but for which exist two end populations in the series which are too distant to interbreed. Now, this is an example of the greenish wobbler migration pattern. Now, they started down there at the bottom, then they migrated to two different parts. Now, the species at the red species and the orange and green species can interbreed. The blue, green and orange can interbreed, but the blue and red at the very end cannot interbreed. This is an example of when they have diverged too much at the very end of the ring, where they cannot interbreed anymore and they are considered different species. Now, this is the same for the Encentina salamanders in California Valley. Now, they originally came from the top, the blue species, and then they went all the way to the bottom. The two bottom species, the slightly slightly shaded different color at the bottom there, I don't know if you can see that clearly, and then the green one, both of them cannot mate with one another, but they can mate with everyone else with the different colors, but except the ones at the bottom. This is an example of how speciation happens in space instead of the time. We have new dimensions of time and space. This is to show how geography can cause speciation over time. Now, vestigiality. This is another evidence for evolution. Now, vestigiality is structures which have lost their function or have lost their original purpose in a species. Now, vestigiality occurs by a normal evolution process when evolution comes to more better forms or more efficient forms, and the old forms lose their function and eventually will disappear to the changing environment. Now, this is an example of the underdeveloped leg bone of a whale, baleen whale. Now, if you look at the sea, you can see the sea is a hind leg structure which forms in whales. They don't need it, but they still have it. Another form of vestigiality is our coccyx, our tailbone. Yeah, the human tailbone. If you can see here in the picture, that we have this small structure there which is jutting out, which we don't need at all. It's a tailbone, a vestigial organ from when we used to have tails. Another vestigial organ is our wisdom teeth, which we don't use for anything. It's so far back you can't even use it for anything. and our vermiform appendix, which has no reason and usually causes us more harm than good. Vestigial characters have also been found at the molecular level. Humans cannot synthesize vitamin C, but we need vitamin C in our bodies. Most other creatures, except for primates and some bats, can synthesize, but we can't. Now,
30 seconds.
Now, atavism is a tendency to revert to ancestral type. I don't have much time, I'm going to run through. Okay, this is an example of atavism, where genes which are not normally expressed in the phenotype in our current human type currently, but do sometimes get expressed through mutations or radiation and all that. And this is a tail of atavistic tail found in a 6-year-old girl. The tail was removed obviously for cosmetic reasons, so she can lead a normal life. And those are hind legs on a whale, a dolphin, sorry. Yeah, I'm going to skip most of this.
Ding, ding, ding.
So yeah, I'll go through it later if I have time. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Firstly, let me begin by expressing my gratitude to the APOSL team, particularly Mr. Pepper, for granting us this opportunity to be heard. Yes, that's him. Let's give him a hand. Really thankful for this opportunity to be heard. And it's my hope, that what began in October, was it? Or was it September last year in the Does God Exist debate? And what is happening today will continue to birth forth more and more of these forums, where we get to hear each other out, not necessarily argue about everything, but just to hear one another out, because there is a lot of things that we can learn from one another, and I hope that this forum will demonstrate just that. Okay. Now, we are talking about evolution, and the term evolution is a very slippery one, and it can refer to many things. Evolution can refer to many things. So if by evolution you simply mean change over time, then I'm happy to announce it, and I'm an evolutionist myself, because I believe in change over time. So, but if evolution, as they have demonstrated, means more than just change over time, if evolution is more, and if supposing that evolution means, that all life species originate from a single ancestor via undirected mutation and natural selection, this is textbook definition of Darwinism, then I do have my objections, and I'm sure that Professor living with me will have as well. This is because it's a direct violation of our understanding of the cause and effect structure of which this universe is built. What do I mean? Let me demonstrate. This phone I hold here, smartphone, I'm sure that many of you would have one. It's a smartphone. I believe it's intelligent, and it computes a lot of calculations. It can do a lot of calculations, give me a lot of mathematical equations without mistake. It can lead me to places where I've never been before. Particularly, my dad was using it to come here, the GPS. It also defeats me in chess, this phone. That's how smart it is. At least now you know what I do in class. So, but the point is this phone is intelligent, but its intelligence is a borrowed intelligence. It's an artificial intelligence. Its intelligence is not its own. Its intelligence comes from a higher source of intelligence, in which case man, the human designer. And that's my point in arguing about intelligent design. So, I do. When you talk about stuff like what he was talking about just now, the DNA complexity within life species, you look into the DNA, you look into the genetic code, you look at the amount of information and intelligence contained within cells. You ask yourself the bigger question: where does this come from? So, I do recognize there is a limitation here. Firstly, I'm using a phone. It's a mechanical device. And we're talking about biology here, living things that are able to evolve. You do recognize this limitation with my analogy, but the point I'm trying to make here is simply this. Intelligence cannot come from non-intelligence. I repeat it again, intelligence cannot come from a non-intelligent source. So, as the famous, if the famous 80s Richard Dawkins once said this, he says that biology is the study of complicated things that give the appearance of having been designed for a purpose. And my argument today on behalf of intelligent design is that if it looks designed, then it very likely is designed for a purpose. So, and this is what intelligent design stands for. I'll hand over the time to my esteemed partner, to Professor Livingly, to handle the rest of it.
Okay, thank you for giving me this opportunity to come here. I actually teach the course on evolution in University Malaya. One of my former students is there. And I'm still teaching there as a adjunct professor because they can't find somebody to teach the advanced course on paleontology, which is the study of fossils. So a lot of people are quite taken aback because my students, they know that I'm a Christian, they know that I believe in God, they know that I believe in creation, but how can you be teaching the course on evolution in the university? You see? All those stuff is the part of the stuff that we teach them. And I think this has got to do with how we do science today. And the way we do science today is what we call naturalism. You just exclude anything which is, even smells of supernatural and say that one beyond the investigation of science. You only confine your investigation to what you can see, you can measure, you can touch, and sense, and so on. But even from the time when I was a small kid in primary school, I knew that there was more to life than just physical life and what you can see and measure. And especially if we live in Malaysia, a place like Malaysia, which is so rich culturally. That's why maybe you can excuse the Westerners for not understanding it. But you have friends who, let's say during APOSL, they go and have a spike right through their cheek. Tomorrow they pull it out and then they come back to the office with no mark at all. That's the kind of thing that science cannot explain one. So there's more to life than just what we can see and measure and all that. You want to have a more complete worldview of life, it has to include something, science plus something else equals the total reality. Okay, that's beside the point. Now, we come back to this idea of intelligent design, and actually the guru of it is this William Dembski. If you can get hold of his book. I just finished reading it about 3 hours ago. But it's very interesting. He says you don't go and mix up intelligent design with what is called young earth creationism, whereby they say the Bible has to be taken literally, and this is what the Genesis story is, and then every point then is proven by science that the earth is just made by God 10,000 years ago or something like that. That's not what he's arguing. What he's trying to bring us down to is face something more basic than that, and that is whether life, the existence of earth, of life, of us human beings, is by the process of random, chance, just by accident. Lots of accidents happening all along the way, and then the end result is, here, on this wonderful earth with all the wonderful life all around. Or is it was designed, it's following certain trajectory because something is built in to drive it in a particular direction, is it? It means not totally random, but designed. And then okay, you don't have to read the book, I'll just tell you the two basic ideas that he's proposing. One is, how do you know that something is designed? Suppose you have got you spill some ink on the table, okay, there's an ink block. You can also deliberately take a bottle of ink and pour on the table and produce an ink block. Now, if something like that, it's hard to tell whether it was intentionally designed, you spill or accidentally, it happens, you see. But suppose you come across a page with a nice written, message, you would not say that it has happened accidentally, isn't it? It has to be someone intelligent has done it. So what he says is that it's the test of specific complexity. It is specific, it is not random, it is complex, you know. He says, I mean, if you've got a pig rooting in a patch of ground, I can accidentally form a letter A. You know, it looks designed, but you can argue, by chance, so it can maybe happen like that. But if you see the, you know, a sentence written in the mud, it cannot be by chance anymore, no? Because it's specific complexity, you see. So that's the first idea. Now the second idea in intelligent design is this, is irreducible complexity. What do you mean by that? And this one actually comes from another guru of the intelligent design movement, Michael Behe, you see. In his book, The Darwin's Black Box, he says this. Suppose you come across, you know, the old-fashioned mousetrap with the spring, the trigger, and then the platform and so on, all that. He says you cannot form the mousetrap bit by bit, you know, and say today we have this one, next day the spring and all that. It won't work. It's either all at one go, you have every component and it works, or else it's not at all. It's either not at all or what. And actually, I mean, the mousetrap is actually a very, very simple contraption. But in life, when you think of the first cell, even the most simplest one that we have today is irreducibly complex, you know. All the biochemical pathways, the enzymes, how they interact and all that, is so interdependent on each other that should even just one of them be, you know, missing, it won't function, you see. I mean, that's why you have, if I ask you what's the difference between a dead body and a live body, just one moment ago, he is, you know, alive, next moment is dead, you weigh it, you analyze it, is, you know, all the elements, everything are the same, but what has gone out is this simultaneous functioning of everything, the heart, the brain, you know, all the biochemical pathways that makes the body alive. So when one of it breaks down and all that, that's it, you shut down the system, you see. And life, living organisms are so complex that's, you know, it's irreducibly complex. So that is the second, their second argument. So, I think that is the take-off point that we will take when we discuss intelligence. How will you recognize intelligence? Okay, if it is there, and then he said don't even bother with the question of who is the intelligent person, you know, whether there's God or not and all that. Just answer the basic question: is life intelligent and designed, or is it just random by random events? A whole series of lucky accidents right from the Big Bang until now. It's time's up, is it? That's we have the wonderful what we have today. Thank you. Okay, I'll stop.
Okay. Right. So right now we're going to open the panel to either side to just start the whole thing going.
Okay. I would like to firstly reply to Doctor's statement on how we derive meaning from the complexity in life. I would like to quote someone his name is Dr. Carl Edward Sagan. He was an American astronomer, astrophysicist, cosmologist, author, science popularizer, and science communicator in astronomy and natural sciences. And he is very well known for his book, Cosmos, which explains the universe. I think a lot of you who love science might know him. So I would like to say that he once said, when Kepler, a scientist, found his long-cherished belief did not agree with the most precise observation of his, and he spent a good part of his life going through this, and he thought that and he said that he accepted the uncountable fact of his mistake, and he preferred the hard truth to his dearest illusions, and that is the heart of science. So, where we come from is that we don't wish to seek. It's not to say we don't wish to seek meaning, but we have everyone has different ways of deriving meaning from life, and it's just that we prefer to decide what is the truth and what is false, and then we go from there instead of basing our truth from our beliefs. We do it the other way around. Like just like how when I look up into the stars, I feel such humility from how tiny I am in this such vast universe. So that's my point lah. That is, I don't wish to mix my personal beliefs with what is right. Okay, and there's one more thing I would like to say, that I find that your argument on irreducible complexity, Michael B. Darwin's black box, right? His main point is that, correct me if I'm wrong, if you take away one part of a complex system, it cannot function. Is that? I think it's not a very accurate way of looking at evolution, because evolution, when you look at mutations, you see that mutations of genes which affect the appearance or the function of the organism, they don't necessarily add, because I feel that irreducible complexity, and it is stated in the definition that if you take away something, it implies that evolution adds things, as it goes along. But in fact, there are many types of mutations, and there are mutations that also take away. So if you take a Roman arc, and you see there are many bricks like this, and you feel that, okay, according to Michael Behe's definition, the Roman arc is irreducibly complex, because when you take away one part, it doesn't function, it is not whole. But if you see how they were structured, they first put a framework first, yes, and then only they remove the framework after they have built that thing. So I feel that it's not a very accurate way of looking at evolution. That's all I have to say for now.
Thank you for pointing out. You see, when we say irreducibly complex, you go back to that, just now, a sentence that's formed of alphabets. If I take a bunch of Scrabble pieces and I just throw it on the I mean, by chance you may form something simple like the word AN or something like that. But if it forms a very complex word and complex sentence, then that is what will tell us that, hey, this is some intelligent input and not just random chance, you see. And if you think of it, the basic building blocks of life, DNA, RNA, and the proteins, it's just 20 proteins, and then the bases are just the combinations. It gives us everything that's in the genetic code, So it is like, are we going to just accept that it's just random chance that these very complex sentences that's coding the information that's being passed on arose by chance, or is it design? You see, you've got a choice. It's like, are you picking that's by throwing a bunch of Scrabble, it forms words, it forms sentences, or that's because it has meaning, and the information is passed on. So from one generation to the next, there is specific complexity in it, and therefore it's not random, it's not by chance.
Can you explain what's the difference between sorry, I lost my voice. Can you explain the difference between DNA and RNA? Would you like to know?
You know the helix, the double helix, two strands, and then they join specifically together. That it's like you're having two keys. They fit exactly. She's illustrators with different lengths. So what happened during to sexual reproduction? You have to split the two, then join half and half from the father and mother in sexual reproduction. Then you form a whole, and then there's the new combination. You have you join pepper, and I don't know what's your wife's name, but you probably produce paprika. She has features of both. You see, that's how it goes. But all these things, what is is it that drives it, is it?
Okay.
Is it totally random chance or there's a...
I'm sorry, Doctor,
Yeah.
but before you go on, I have to disagree that evolution is about random chance, because natural selection is the opposite of random. The mutations are random, yes, but let's say your analogy on alphabets. If I were to scatter lots of alphabets on the table, and there's an external force, in which case it's nature. Like, okay, if I'm nature, I pretend I'm nature, and I just prefer that the letter B is more than letter A is. Okay, so over time you scatter and it goes away. You are left with a lot of B's and some A's because I selected it, and that is what nature does when the forces of the wind, non-random mating, which means the mates that choose, they prefer the longer tails are more nicer to mate with or something like that. Yeah, so natural selection is all about that. It does not imply randomness, like anyhow, just like you go to 4D and it's not pure luck. Yeah, I'm so sorry. Yeah, so I would like to disagree. It's not that.
I agree with you that once it's started, it's directed, and it's actually that's how natural selection works. The constant interaction between it's like a warfare. You see, the predator develops something, then the prey has to develop evasive what is it? But what gives them even the intelligence to do that? You see, so why does it have to be that direction instead of, if it's just random? Actually, it should be directional. You see, the fact that it has direction and can even decipher and say that intelligently this is what happened shows that there is only intelligent beings can recognize intelligence.
Doctor, may I interrupt there? No, I think she already explained to you that it's even though it just directs species to survive and to adapt better. It doesn't matter that there is no specific purpose where they are actually trying to become better or what. They're just trying to survive, and through that process, like I've explained just now, natural selection, what happens is that the predator would be able to get, say for example, the weaker creatures that can't run away. So only the stronger will survive, and they will breed genes which allow them, for example, to run faster from the predators. So which is how those genes get propagated. And now the predator realizes that the predator cannot catch up with the creatures who run fast. Only the faster predators can catch up. And so again, only the fastest will mate, and again they will become more faster, and that's how the evolutionary arms race works. So and that's how natural selection is not exactly random. Natural selection is actually very adapted to making the creature survive better in its environment.
I think what Living is saying is, how does the cheetah know to catch the deer and not eat grass? Is that what you're saying?
Not really. We are talking the natural arms race
Okay.
So you see, sometimes my problem even as I teach is that even if I don't bring in religion and all that and play the game by the rules of you just stick to what is natural explanations for what we see, decipher from the fossil record and all that. They are so big questions that what would it take to modify even a very simple thing in say the predator so that it can be faster to reach the prey and all that.
I would say that it would take a few 100 million years.
It's not just time, That's why I'm glad I read Deb's Kibo. He has got 2 PhDs, one in mathematics and one in philosophy, So and he shows you the calculations involved in let's say the just getting the life from these 20 proteins and all that. It is the figure is so astronomical that it cannot have happened by chance. The probability is so large, and mathematically.
The chances of you winning the lottery is also astronomical, but someone wins it every day.
He identifies the question there. He actually answers the question in his book.
That's what happens. All that needed to happen was for that one chance to happen, that one single chance to happen, then evolution will take its course, and it will diverge, it will survive, it will reproduce, and all that. So all it needed was that one incredibly small chance. So it doesn't matter.
Well, okay, what proof do you have that this small chance actually did happen?
Well, we have, if I may go back to my evidence earlier, we can see that we are related to common previous ancestor species. I gave some examples just now, vestigial organs. We have the vermiform appendix. It's in other creatures, the herbivores, they are the cecum. What it does is it breaks down cellulose. Cellulose, because herbivores, they eat plants, they need to break down that cellulose. We don't eat that much plants, we don't eat raw plants anymore. We eat meat and all, we're omnivorous. So over time, the cecum lost its function and is now the vermiform appendix, which is pretty useless to us right now, which is why a lot of people operate and remove it. There's also the wisdom tooth. The wisdom tooth is a vestigial organ which we don't use, and our tailbone. And there are other forms of vestigiality in other creatures too. You can see that whales actually have form structures which would form leg bones, which do not form full legs anymore. They're just small bones hanging there which don't do anything at all. And these are all these are suggestive that whales used, because whales used to be land creatures, they had a wolf-like ancestor before they went back to the sea. And this can be shown more clearly in the fossil record.
The whale came from the wolf, are you sure?
A wolf-like creature, not a wolf. A wolf-like creature.
Yeah, I find it hard to believe actually. You're running in the forest one day and then suddenly like, I have to go back to the sea and live in there. How does that work? Yeah, how does that work?
Maybe I'll help him a bit. No, it doesn't happen that today is a wolf and tomorrow is a whale. It doesn't happen that way. What they believe is that by gradual small steps, and actually they are whale-like creatures which have hind flippers. So, but that's very point. Now this, you've got to be very careful of vestigial organs. A lot of the things we think are vestigial in a human is not, like the coccyx. If you chop it off, you will walk funny, I tell you. Because it's needed to anchor specific muscles in our bottom to help us walk properly. And for a long time, we thought that the vermiform appendix was the leftover from the, some certain days now is what. And then happily doctors were cutting it off and, when they're opening up for other things and say, yeah, this one no need. Then now they actually find that it has got a contribution to our immune system, So please don't go and simply cut off your appendix.
No, but a lot of people have had their appendix removed.
Of course.
They're not.
So now the thing is this. One of the arguments is, does intelligent design means that it has to be optimal design? That's a theological question. If God is so smart, why, Richard Dawkins would say why such a roundabout way to have the long neck of the giraffe and so on.
Yeah, the laryngeal.
Yeah, but if you look at all systems in this fallen world of ours, none of us is actually optimally designed. All systems. There has to be compromise of some sort.
But why is that compromise? Why? I mean, what does your ID say about vestigial organs?
Well, first of all, let's be what that's. Even vestigial organs, a lot of it now, the medical proof is that it is not vestigial. It has functions. So we have made a mistake in naming them vestigial.
If I may interrupt, vestigial organs doesn't mean that it doesn't have a function. It means that the original function is no longer there. Like for example, ostrich still have wings which they use to balance themselves, but the wings cannot fly anymore. There's no reason for them to have wings. They could have arms which balance themselves, but they have wings, which shows that the wings served a different purpose before that, which shows that speciation happened, that it was a different species, which is the entire point of evolution.
Yeah. So?
Yeah, let me listen to his I want to listen to his vestigial organs explanation, please. Yeah, go on, Living.
Before he lost my thoughts already because of the interesting ostrich wings. Let's not, what I'm saying, second guess function Okay, the ostrich wing may not be good for flying but I mean, it is there. It has got maybe other functions which we do not know yet. So the interesting thing is that's what we are hoping to find in, as a paleontologist, a fossil person, is that if you have got a nice series of reduction, and we don't have that. I know that I can give my students an explanation why transitional fossils which has like half this, half that, it's not so common. Like Archaeopteryx is almost one of the rare ones between birds and dinosaurs. But there should be more of it, and we are not seeing that, you see. So it's still one of those unanswered questions, you see. Transitional forms, why shouldn't there be more of it, you see?
But there are some, doesn't it show that they exist? And also, fossils doesn't need to prove evolution. I mean, there's already evidence in our DNA. The fact that humans can even grow tails if there's a mutation in the gene, that they can grow back tails which are expressed again in the phenotype. There's examples of people with human tails. There's even it can even be passed on. Like I can't remember where exactly, but it happened. I can look it up. That there are some people it passed on in the females in the family where they reproduce, and there's this entire small group of people who have tails, humans.
So?
I'm trying to say that
I'm not arguing about the ancestry of humans here, whether we have tails or not, you see. But if we have, it is within our genes that we have it, and whether it's expressed or not, and
Okay, personally, I find vestigial organs are not my favorite. One of my favorite arguments. I would like to go on to what I promised to present to you guys about the vitamin A synthesis. Vitamin C synthesis. Okay. As we all know, most animals can synthesize vitamin C, except for us, primates, certain bats, and guinea pigs. So, as you all know just now, the phylogenetic tree, which is like the tree of life, which shows the relationship between, because they sequence DNA, it means that they match the DNA and found how closely related they are, and so they kind of mapped it out and it became a tree-like shape. And so this relates to my point, is because they found that when inspected closely, why is it that certain animals cannot synthesize vitamin C? It's because of this gene called the GULO gene, which is redundant, which is a pseudo gene which cannot work. And it was supposed to code for to make an enzyme which was an enzyme used in the final stage of synthesizing vitamin C. Means that all of us we all have the gene, the sequence of genes to synthesize vitamin C, except for that just last part, that just last enzyme. And they found that in primates and in us, we have the exact part of that DNA. It is there's a deletion, which is a mutation, and it's in that exact, out of like 165 base pairs. Why is it that we share with the primates the exact same part, which is gone, and that's why we can't synthesize vitamin C? And if you look at guinea pigs, they can't synthesize vitamin C, and so scientists looked at that gene and found that the mutation is not similar to ours. It's somewhere else. Means that, and the reason for this is actually because it wasn't positively selected for. So it's like because we had an abundance of vitamin C in our diet. So when our ancestors lost that gene, that gene function, it became like, oh, so whatever, because we have we can survive anyway, so it doesn't matter that we cannot synthesize vitamin C. And just so you know, when we don't eat vitamin C, we don't have vitamin C in our diet, we get scurvy. And last time sailors, I'm sure you guys know, used to die at sea because they didn't have vitamin C in the diet. So why is it that, and it's not just primates and us, there are a few animals in that, in the phylogenetic tree at the exact branch that clade, they pinpointed there that all the animals down there, which is related on, which is on that branch, have the exact mutation. Why is that? I don't think ID can explain that unless you can say the intelligent designer decided to make it seem like it was evolution. I don't know. Why is it? Why that one? Yeah. So that I find that very, very strong evidence for common descent, which is part of which is what evolution also supports.
Actually, nobody denies that that glucose was you have the insertion not there, and then there's this gap, and then we don't. But what are we making of this? You see, we seem to be talking at cross purposes of two levels. You must know that knowing about something doesn't make it happen. If I know that if you step in front of that Sriwijaya bus, you're going to become pancake. It doesn't make that happen.
Yeah, but
you have to. Somebody has to do the experiment. Something has to remove. What is this directed? The directed thing that's making things happen. You see. So it's not just the problem with us now is that with science is that we are knowing more and more of the how, but we are not answering the why. You see. Why should removing that affect the whole that manufacture of vitamin C? So those questions is a different level. But what we are discovering that if all this, in fact, these very precise things within the glucose affects vitamin C production, that shows you that that is the genetic code, which is so detailed that and we are saying that, are we going to go one step back and say that all this genetic code, which is so detailed, which even if you modify what it will cause vitamin C and inability to manufacture, is all by chance, or was it intelligent process? You're not even saying God created it,
But we lost the ability to synthesize vitamin C. That's a distinct disadvantage for creatures. Like, why would any intelligent being make? I mean, why would it be intelligent to remove the ability to create our own vitamin C and force us to naturally adapt and
again, you're putting purpose in. That's what we are creating. This more basic question is that.
So you're saying
is there intelligence?
So you're saying the intelligence doesn't have a purpose?
No, I'm saying that intelligence is there, whether there is purpose or not is secondary. Zemsky always argues, is there or not intelligence? And when you look at the sequence of what, and it's now she has given an example, so precise that, if just one insertion missing, you can't manufacture vitamin C already. What is it telling us? That there is a genetic code. What gives a code? I mean, a code cannot arise by random. It has to be. It's like language. Another example he used is this. It's like language. It's meaningless if there is no specific complexity. You see? Language won't exist. We'll just be, making sounds and not able to communicate. Or when we begin to understand each other, is because we have an understanding that is a sequence, and it's testable in our experience. So that gradually, we can understand. If I say this, I mean this. I want you to do this. That's it's there.
Before we go on, can we just define intelligence? What do you mean by intelligence? Because like we seem to be having different ideas. Because I especially think of intelligence. We think that intelligence needs to have a purpose. When you do something with intelligence, it needs to have a purpose. You seem to be advancing the idea that intelligence doesn't have a purpose. So how is it intelligent if it does not have a purpose? How do you define something as intelligent if it's seemingly random? How is
the
that
word
different
intelligence
from...
come from inter, which is in between, and logos, communication. So the key to intelligence is, and in fact the highlight of what is actually communication theory, and that is actually a valid branch of science, which he says it's all based on the understanding that we can communicate between, inter and logos, we can communicate with each other because there is intelligence.
So you're saying that intelligence has to come from intelligence?
Information has to come from intelligence. And not from random events. That's basically what he's saying.
No, but your definition of intelligence doesn't have any sort of purpose behind it. If without purpose, how is anything different from randomness?
If we say we are intelligent people who can communicate with each other, that is shown is shown by why should I want to communicate with you?
Yeah, no, but even then we decide to communicate.
So there is a purpose.
Yes, exactly. There's a purpose.
Yeah.
But then again, you fail to explain the purpose behind all these changes and all that. Then doesn't that defeat the concept of intelligence?
Well, if you put it, that's the purpose is survival. I mean, that's what you say, natural selection. Okay, there are actually more than one purpose. It's not just survival, but optimal living condition. And in fact, I like your sickle cell anemia. That's the one I pull out to the students. What do you mean? In evolution, we always say survival of the fittest, and fittest does not mean the strongest and so on. Actually, the guy with the sickle cell anemia is sick. He's not normal. Compared to others. But in that particular situation where there's a high malaria incidence, it confer an advantage to the person. You see, I mean to the person with the sickle cell anemia. You see. So it doesn't mean we just get stronger, faster, and better, and there's, it's what suits the situation.
Let's hear from Simon, who's been very quiet.
Right, I've been sitting down here and listening to the professor, and I began to wonder whether I'm actually a student here, because I enjoy listening. I'm sure we all are. No, but I just have one question, and this is a sincere question that I've always had, and I wanted to ask people who actually deal with evolution and who embrace it. Remember, when I talk about evolution, I'm not talking about the common ancestry. I'm not really talking about that. I'm talking about, like what you said, random mutation, natural selection. I just want to ask you, how do you scientifically, as in based on observation, arrive at the conclusion that it is random, it's purposeless? How do you scientifically arrive at it? And this is a sincere question.
Okay, two things. Mutation is random, natural selection is not. Mutation is random because it randomly happens, like the UV light. In fact, just exposure to UV can cause your genes to mutate. Exposure to any forms of radiation can cause you to mutate. There's 1,001 things that can cause your genes to mutate. Mutation is random. Now, what happens with natural selection is when your genes are selected. What I mean by selected is that by you propagating your genes, those genes become more popular. Like, for example, if by chance a mutation causes you to have red hair, and girls like red hair, so they might find you more attractive. There's higher chances of you getting a mate as opposed to a guy that doesn't have red hair, for example. So this is how natural selection works. Natural selection is not random, but again, it doesn't have a purpose. All it does is it makes all it does is a natural process by which the most likely to reproduce does reproduce, and those who don't have traits that are seem to be beneficial for the thing just don't reproduce.
Now, when I actually asked the question, what I had in mind is this. One of the things we need to understand, and I'm sure you would agree with me, is that Darwinism or evolution actually arose as a rejection of the theistic explanation of the Bible. In 1851, Darwin's 10-year-old daughter died, and he.
I would disagree with that. I think you're reading too much into Darwin's personal history. He came about this theory through observation. It was substantiated by evidence, by experiment.
I would agree with you, but my question is, was it before he lost his faith, or was it after he lost his faith?
I don't think that's relevant.
Actually, he did not want to. Actually, yes, she's right. It's not relevant whether he lost his faith or not.
But my point in saying that is this: that how do you basically arrive at the conclusion that something is random? Remember, my point here is that evolution is a rejection of theistic explanation. Am I wrong in saying that?
Would you then say that Galileo rejected theistic explanation because he said the Earth went around the sun?
No, I wouldn't say that.
But yeah, this is exactly the same thing.
How would you arrive at that conclusion?
Science is doing its work. Like for example, like you talk about Kepler. Kepler had a different worldview, had a religious worldview, and through his experimentation, he found it wrong. So he changed his view because he saw that the natural world didn't go with what the worldview was at that time, and which is why he changed his view. And the same thing happened to Darwin. Darwin went around the world. He traveled. He found evidence for his theory of evolution, and he found that it was true, and therefore he published it. It's as simple as that. There's nothing to do with rejecting any form of worldview and all that. You're putting some sort of negative meaning into this thing. When all it happened was he discovered something, he published it. Over time, we have found out that it was true.
Okay, let me
It's the same with any other theory that has happened.
Let me break it down to just ask you, do you believe in naturalism? I think the answer is quite obvious, right?
Yes.
You definitely do. And naturalism is the view that says that you cannot exclude anything, that nature is all that exists, and that there is absolutely nothing beyond nature. Now, when you hold into a worldview called naturalism, that is when you arrive at, and correct me if I'm wrong, please, that when you look at things and you say, wait, it's undirected here, it's random. Because again, we cannot consider that there has been any outside intervention. We cannot consider that. That's how we arrive at. On the contrary, I don't hold to naturalism. I accept evolution as it is, but I say it is possible that we understand the cause and effect of the universe, that things that appear designed are indeed designed, and they have intelligent cause. So yeah.
Okay, before I answer that, can I ask you something in return?
Please do.
You said that you accept evolution, but then you say it's design. So which one is it? Do you accept evolution or do you accept...
Perhaps I'll qualify myself. I accept common and... I'm okay, let me not say this. I'm not entirely open to the common ancestry of all species, but I'm beginning to accept it, realizing its place. But the fact, when you say Darwinism does not simply mean that all living species originated from a single cell, blah blah blah. It also has the statement like what you said. It did so through a process called undirected mutation. It did so through a process known as natural selection. This is what I'm really questioning here. Not really the former part, the latter part. I'm just asking. I would like some questions. Please, any one of you.
But it's the same thing. Natural selection is basically how life became diverse from a single cell.
My initial question to this was actually, how do you arrive at the conclusion it is random? And when saying that it is not designed, how do you arrive at the conclusion
it is not random? Okay, see, there are two aspects to this. Some of it is random, some of it is not. Now, random changes happen through mutation. Now, natural selection is how those random changes are selected, and only those that are beneficial to the species to survive that happen to continue. So you see, there's actually two steps here. There is a random thing which happens, and then there is a selected thing which happens because by depending on which survives and not, and those that survive live on and pass on their genes.
Again,
are you okay with the explanation? Do you understand the thing?
I do have questions, I have to admit.
Okay.
My question is that basically just read the question part is for later.
Can I suggest you ask him in terms of how do you justify that it's natural and not?
Yeah, that's my question.
Yeah.
Thank you for qualifying. That's my question.
Okay, so you're asking how do I know this process is natural?
Basically, how do you arrive at the conclusion that it's a natural process? It has no outside intervention. You see, intelligent design basically says that it has an intelligent cause.
There's a very simple answer to that, because there is no evidence that there is an outside force acting on it. Because there is no evidence for an outside force acting on it, we assume that it's all natural until we find evidence for an outside force.
So if I have no evidence, then I have a great-grandfather, therefore I don't. Is that
no, you have evidence for a great-grandfather because...
No, I'm just saying, the absence of an evidence is not evidence for absence. The absence for evidence is not an evidence for absence. You can't... We are dealing with worldviews here.
No,
so
we're not dealing with worldviews, we're dealing with scientific fact. Like,
if there was a teapot circulating around the earth, how are you going to disprove that?
You're going to Russell's teapot.
Yes,
Okay.
but I just that it's outside the realm of science. And how do you? Okay, what if there was something outside the realm of science, or beyond that? How? Like, I don't want to go into.
Dembski's quarrel is what can be admitted as science and what cannot be admitted as science. So the way that we are doing science is tied down to naturalism, so that we say that the only reality is what we can see, touch, and that is within science. Outside of that, you want to talk about God, about miracles, all that is outside of science. But now Dembski say that is not a complete worldview, and he is trying to prove that even if you don't bring in God, by just seeing the effects of what we have in our world, that things are irreducibly complex, things are specifically complex. He says that you can't run away from the fact that because it is so, we see these effects, there has to be design. Because if not, intelligence cannot arise out of non-intelligence. Intelligence can only be derived from intelligence. That's what
maybe Living and Sam, maybe you guys can give us an example of intelligent design. Like they've given their vitamin C thing and their whale coming from a wolf.
So the DNA code and all that is they say that if it's a code, it can't be from random. Just these things just happen and fit together like that. It's so specific. How did it arrive like that? That these things fit so specifically like that. The other thing is this. You've got to read Hughes Ross. There were 70 forces in nature. The strong nuclear force, weak nuclear force, gravity, and all that. That's if just one of these is slightly stronger or weaker, it won't exist already.
Okay, what would you see if the DNA went wrong? Let's say now he's saying that the DNA is perfect, it's intelligent design.
Before that, can I respond to him first?
Go ahead.
No, you said that if one of the forces of nature was slightly different, we wouldn't exist. That's true, we probably wouldn't exist. But it's possible that some other different form of life which is more suited to those forces will exist. This doesn't explain anything, it doesn't prove anything at all.
Well, once you go in like that, we say we don't know lah. Because we only know because we exist, you see. And the amazing thing is that for us to exist, you have got to have these 70 at least different forces in the universe balanced precisely, Even our distance from the sun, slightly out, slightly nearer, all gone, nothing will happen.
Yes, but in science it's
very, very big. The difference between just
let the audience participation.
Just right.
Audience participation a bit later. So just let the panel flesh out a little while.
But I don't find it. I'm just not convinced that just because we are so in awe of it, then it cannot be what. Because it's outside what we know, it has to be something else. I mean, just because we don't understand it, why can't we just say we don't know, and as we find out, as time progresses and as we know more things, we can build up on the information and we find out new things.
Okay, let's talk.
Just let me respond to that, because I mentioned that in my opening speech, that it is not an argument from ignorance. I am not arguing for the God of the gaps, okay? I'm not arguing for the God of the gaps and says just because we do not know what caused it, therefore something that, who has argued that tonight? Nobody. So, my argument, my contention here today is that we understand that the universe is based on a cause and effect structure, and like he said, intelligence cannot arise from non-intelligence. So we look at it and we all agree, it is intelligent. Richard Dawkins, the greatest scientist proponent of, the greatest atheist proponent of our time, has said, biology is the study of things that give the appearance of design. So it seems design and it seems intelligent. Why won't you accept that it's intelligent? Why is the argument against it?
Because you have no evidence to prove that it's intelligent. Just because it appears so doesn't mean it is so. Now, may I go back to the doctor saying that the universe is so finely tuned. It is not exactly that finely tuned. I saw some members of the audience were like jumping out, wanting to answer. Yeah, the distance in space and the sun and all that is like very huge miles. We can strafe, millions of miles. We can move like a few thousand miles in either direction, and not much change will happen on Earth. It is not as finely tuned as some people would like to think, but. Then again, I would still admit that the chances of us existing is very small, but it is not as small as you seem to think it is.
I'm not a mathematician, okay, but the calculation is that there are more, the chance is so large that even if you write it on every, proton in the water, there's not enough proton in the universe the known universe to contain. That's how high the probability is. Mathematicians tell us we take it by faith. And then these constraints weak nuclear force, strong nuclear force, I think that one is, you have to ask the real experts. I mean, we are just taking it on,
I think that's fine. I think they're not experts, they're just doing their best. I think they're doing a good job, I think. Yeah? So maybe let's wrap up because we got Q&A as well. Have you got one last thing? Maybe one last thing to summarize your position, and then we'll open it up for Q&A with the audience. Is that okay? Or is there something else that you really want to just...
I just have a few questions for... and this is just a few last questions so that I can get the review. So I just want to... do you accept evolution? I'll just list a few, perhaps you can write down if it's... I don't know whether it's going to be... Do you accept evolution? Do you accept common ancestry, especially human common ancestry from an ape-like ancestor? And another very important thing is that what proves that intelligence cannot come from non-intelligence? I think this has gone around for a very long time, but we haven't seen like a very specific example of why intelligence cannot come from non-intelligence. Because humans at some point were not really intelligent at all. I mean, if we accept the common ancestor theory, we were creatures. Before this, we were apes. Before that, we were some other, smaller mammals. A long time ago, and then we developed increasingly complex intelligence over time. So this proves that at some point we weren't that intelligent, and intelligence is a factor that's growing. And in fact, now scientists' surveys, statistics shows that we are becoming more intelligent as a human race. We are becoming more intelligent as a species. The general intelligence level is rising every generation. So it shows that we are progressing from less intelligence to more intelligence. So what gives you this idea that we only intelligence can come from intelligence, when the evidence seems to suggest that we came from less intelligence?
Okay, let's start with the evolution question first. You have to distinguish between macro and micro evolution. What we are observing, like different breeds of dogs, different races of human beings, and changes when you adapt to climate and all that is micro evolution. And that one nobody quarrels whether you are creationist or atheist or whatever. But macro evolution, there are still huge gaps in our knowledge of it, and in fact it is not fact. Don't believe it. People tell you it's fact. This is my area of study, and I know that it's not fact. Just take me by word I did. Okay, common and ancestry. Okay. We have all these nice trees, but is it just an idea, or is it fact? Can you really join all the different groups together? When we again it's a level of scale, When you want to see one form of finch, the bird that Darwin saw in Galapagos, changing to another, no problem. But to have something else, a big change between one group to another. Yes, we have got hints of it, but that is our interpretation, So we have hints of how amphibians change to reptiles to mammals and so on, and dinosaurs to birds. But is it really that way that it has been? We do not have concrete evidence, and I don't think we have. We can keep working at it. In fact, that's what pay our research grants. What proves intelligence can come from non-intelligence? Seeing an increasingly complexity in life is not equal to intelligence. In fact, if you think of it, actually our brains are over capacity. Which is a very strange thing, isn't it? Because in evolution, it's very conservative. What we observe is you do it's like the lazy guy, do the laziest amount of work, use the least amount of resources in order to achieve a purpose. But what you have here is that sometimes you've got this overcapacity, and I wonder what advantage is evolutionary is that, you see, and why should it happen, you see. So there are a lot of questions we still can't answer, but we're trying to find out. Okay.
To your first question, what's your first question again?
Evolution. Do you accept evolution, like common ancestry, macroevolution?
Common ancestry, let me just say I'm open to it. No, it's not a fact. I mean, I won't say it's a fact. I think there's good evidence to go with it. It's not proven without a shadow of doubt. But yeah, I'm open to it. I'm open to the evidence. The second question again? I didn't have time to check.
No, what about the common ancestry from a human common ancestry from an ape-like creature?
Like I said, I'm open to it. I'm open to that. But when you talk, my disagreement is when you talk about random mutation and you talk about natural selection, that's where the doubts arise, that's where the questions arise, because we believe in an intelligent cause at the beginning of it. We look at the complexities there is, and going to your third question, you're talking about, you ask the question, that, how did you phrase your third question again?
Intelligence
No, actually, it's, what is your evidence for intelligence can only arise from intelligence?
No, I think that it's based on our understanding of the world that there is a cause and effect structure of everything. We know that intelligence does, and I gave you an example of, a material example. We know we are dealing with biology here, but I gave you a material illustration that an intelligent phone has an intelligent designer. In the same way, if you're not talking about human intelligence here, please do not get me wrong here. I'm not talking about human intelligence. I'm talking about the intelligence contained, the complexities, the intelligence contained in cells, in biological things. You're talking about the genetic code. You're talking about the DNA and so forth, which Dr. Living has been talking about all this while. How does those intelligence, more complex than this phone, arrive from purely random and unnatural sources? So that's a question I have. So yeah.
Okay, well, let's wrap up. I think you're also tired already. So since we started with evolution, so we let evolution wrap up in a couple of sentences, your stand, and then we have a summary from the intelligent design panel as well.
Okay, I think we've seen a lot of different arguments here today, and I think one of the biggest things is that it seems like they are not exactly completely dismissive of evolution. They accept that there's probably quite a lot of evidence for it. They're just not completely sure about it. While we disagree with some of their things, we think that it has already been proven that there are a lot of evidence for it. For example, that in our DNA we see that we have huge percentage similar with our common ancestry. I think most of them are even open to the idea of common ancestry. Now, what the main crux of this forum boiled down to was whether or not that there is an intelligence behind guiding this process. Would you say that? Agree with that?
Intelligent cause.
Yes, intelligent cause behind this thing. Now, since evolution is a field of science, it doesn't deal with causes that isn't natural. So we have no way of verifying this thing either yes or no. We can only deal with all the natural forces we have around us, and all the natural forces suggest that it came about through completely natural processes. That natural selection, mutation, genetic drift, gene flow, all these processes are what drives evolution and what has caused evolution to progress so far, and its life to progress so far. So I would like to end by saying that there is no evidence whatsoever that suggests that an intelligence needs to be behind this process. The analogy of a cell phone is very different compared to biological life. Biological life can grow, can reproduce itself. Its cells can do things by itself. And I think there's also been a lot of misinformation that they are conflating intelligence with information. I agree, there's a lot of information in your DNA, but your DNA is not intelligent. There's a very huge difference. There's a huge amount of information in your genes and in your cells, but those things are not by itself intelligent. And that's a huge, I think that's a huge difference between both sides here today.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you. So for creation, like to create the evolution, intelligent design, would you like to?
I will answer the question I asked myself, ask you all at the first. how can I teach evolution and still believe in God? It's because if we go within the confines of naturalism, then doing science the way we are doing science now, in all the universities and all that, is we will come out with a possible explanation of how the complexity of life arose is by the evolution theory, not fact, theory. Still a lot of holes to deal with. But I'm saying that this may not be the best if you are willing to accept that there's more to life than just what naturalism tells us. Whether you want to go beyond that or not is your choice. But personally, I've chosen that we have to go beyond science and beyond. I mean, naturalism, natural science and beyond. And once we are not even debating about whether intelligence means optimum functioning or not. Once it has started and it's not by random, then the process of evolution can actually, at least microevolution, can drive the process, because once you've got the raw material and it's intelligent, the DNA and all that, you can go. But to start it in the first place, that is the big question. And I up to now, I still don't believe that life can arise by non-life. That means the whole complex thing, because of irreducible complexity, because of specific complexity.
Right. At the beginning of, firstly, I'd like to say thank you, a very big thank you. Let's give them a hand, please. Really thank you for an opportunity, like I began, I said, an opportunity to hear one another out, and I think in that sense it has been a total success. We have heard one another out. Really appreciate the effort. That's so sorry. Really appreciate the effort put by the evolved team, should we say? In producing, the amount of arguments that they did. Now, in closing, I began and I said, I myself acknowledge that there is limitations to using a handphone analogy, using material things and so forth. But my point behind this whole thing has been, can intelligence come from a non-intelligent cause, not direction, the cause. We are talking about the cause here. And I asked myself a question, has the evolution team been able to dismiss? Have they proved scientifically that it is impossible? You can have an intelligent life forms without an intelligent cause. Have they done that? I don't think they have. Have they proven that there is intelligent design is wrong in any way in some of its assertions? I don't think they've done that. I think they've raised very good arguments, but I don't think they've been able to do that. And those are the things I'd like to conclude with. I think we still have reason to believe, based on our understanding, that things, intelligence does have an intelligent cause. And with that, to say thank you.
Okay, let's give them a big hand. I certainly enjoyed myself. I don't know about you. Did you enjoy yourself? I thought that was quite interesting, right? I expected it to be quite boring, so I did very